G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a video about a few things, with the main one being about shot calls, shot corrections in ELR shooting. But I'll go through a couple of other things I want to go through in the video as well. This week we tried to do a challenge. I tried to set up something, design something that we could do as a bit of a teamwork, and that we'll have a teamwork shot. And that involved me and Sam both shooting to get a job done. I set up a couple of targets, and listen, I'll put this bit of footage on so you can see how it went. Not quite successful this week, but you get a bit of an idea. So anyway, here's this bit of footage to have a look and see how that went. Right to the edge, but there's still some good hits on there. Yeah. Okay, well you see in there, listen, we didn't get what we wanted to get done. What it actually set up was a 24-inch plate in front of a 12-inch plate, out at 1,200 yards, picked a couple of rifles that probably will work quite well for that. Sam was shooting with the 243. Both of them are Hauer 1500s. The 243 is in an XLR chassis. The 6.5 Creedmoor I was shooting is in an MDT chassis. Both Nightforce scopes, that sort of stuff. So very nice, accurate rifles, and very good at their job. But the day wasn't ideal. A few things didn't work in that equation. One was the day wasn't ideal. We had blustery wind. It was freezing cold. Well, freezing cold for us at least. It was down in the 5 degrees temperature, so it was cold weather. And you can see mirage. You can see it was blustery enough to actually buffeting the camera around. You can see that side of things, but also the way it's set at the target, we weren't getting enough rotation with that. So you saw that was our first 4 shots, and it didn't work quite at that level. We tried a few more strings, a few more bits and pieces. Here's sort of the best effort that went into it. Okay, so you can see that almost rotated, almost worked. Really need to set up with and design things to let the target twist a little bit more, a little bit of repositioning, but some better weather would really help. Okay, so in that, didn't work, but you get our idea, and we'll work on that and see if we can put together a teamwork thing and probably varying ranges with varying calibers and that sort of stuff. What it did bring up, and what we did get the ideal opportunity to test, was as you can see, the camera was being buffeted, and we see the same thing with the spotting scope when Sam's sitting up in the wind with the spotting scope. And what I designed a little while ago, or started down the process, was a different system for using a spotting scope in a different fashion, and a way of making it more stable. Designed something, I found that worked quite well, and now I'm in the first stage. This little component here is our first step, not ready for market, but that's where we're heading, something to go to market. This is actually our new system. I just have a cheap bipod. It's really made to take anything. It takes a Picatinny rail in the front of it. This is just a cheap knockoff Atlas bipod on the front. And on the back here is our own system, a little push button thing that lets it set up as a little tripod, floor stand, whatever you want to call it, to run this spotting scope on top of it. This simply locates in here, little turnbuckle or a little screw with a handle on it to actually attach the scope to it. We adjust up the rubber mounts underneath it so it sits up nice and tight, but it actually gives you a very stable, it attaches the scope fully to its legs essentially. This is all adjustable obviously to get it up to whatever height suits for either prone or bench spotting. The rear leg can rotate to, if you really wanted a narrow platform or you wanted a really long platform, it's adjustable to be able to, with fine adjustment, rubber foot on it, use the Atlas up the front. able, even for extra stability, to run a little strap through the hoop here and hold it down on the ground. We found in testing this the other day, extremely clean. Once you get down, you're out of the wind, obviously, to a large degree because you're lower to the ground. But because the scope's actually attached with these, or has these rubber feet, both top and bottom, or both front and back, I should say, means that it's no longer simply mounted on its center tripod piece, or the mount in the center here, which gives us so much stability, and found it just, well, at the moment, really, really good. We've got some testing to do. I've already found a couple of things I want to improve on this design, but this is basically where we think we're going to end up over the next few months of testing. We'll see where we get to with this system, but yeah, really like it at the moment, and that's where we're up to for this thing at the moment. Anyway, that's the spotting scope. So we'll just put that to one side. What the video is largely going to be about is shot adjustments, adjusting from your impact to your target for ELR/ULR shooting, and the differences between that and normal shooting. Now, I'll go through the fundamentals of this thing in a couple of places. For most people, target shooting or long range shooting or hunting or all that sort of stuff, practice for hunting, that sort of things, right back to shooting at 25 yards with a pellet gun. You do it through the logic of you shoot at target, so you have a target point, you shoot at it, your bullet hits wherever it is, X distance away from the target, and then you know, from as long as you do everything right with your shot, you know that, let's say it's 10 MOA to the left and it's 10 MOA low, you know that if you make those adjustments, be it in holdover or in scope adjustments or whatever, that you should be able to go up and across, and you shoot again, you're going to be on target. So that's the simple logic of how you correct with normal shooting. The way that works, and the reason it works, is that your target and your backdrop in whatever form are a reasonably straight plane, so that you can see exactly where your shot went and then make the corrections to it. So a simple thing. We are talking about elevation because the windage left and right really doesn't change at whatever distance you are. Well, to a degree, for this conversation, it doesn't change too much. That's always going to stay the same. Although in extreme long range shots, the likes of wind affects things a lot more and there's a lot more going on, still left and right doesn't change. What does change is elevation. Your elevation over the shot. Like I said, we come back to looking at the side profile of the target. If you're low by 10 or 1, whatever it is, you're low by X amount, you adjust, you're back on a target. Well, and this can happen everywhere, but it's much more a problem something to understand in extreme long range or ultra long range shots. Well, I'll go through some various ways. It's quite hard to explain this, but I'll try and go through and explain it and make sense of it. There's two things we're actually dealing with. One is the terrain, or what you're actually shooting on. If you have a cliff face you're shooting into, then so you have a flat face, the target on the front of it, then all of the same normal target shooting processes are involved. But in general, in extreme long range shooting, we don't have those conditions. In most places we're shooting into different terrain, whether that's the side of a mountain, which might be a moderate, 30 degree or 25 degree or 40 degree slope, or that's shooting into a plain situation or over paddocks and things where you have more undulating ground. And the various forms of terrain we're talking about is one of the details we're talking about. The other is the trajectory of the bullet. When you're shooting normal long range and normal fairly close range, you have, although the bullet is always falling, you have a lot straighter path to your bullet. It is only there's only a little bit of a curve to it, so there's not too much curve involved. Once you shoot at extreme distances, then you start to get more of a parabolic arc or an exponential curve, or all the big words I can talk about. What I'm talking about is essentially the bullet starts to go wherever it's heading. Generally in a long range shot you're shooting up for a while, and then it starts to roll over and basically starts to come down at more and more of an angle as the bullet slows down and gets further out there. So you combine those two things. Now, as I said, it's quite complicated. What I've actually put together is a little bit of a video to go through and try and start to explain a little bit of the differences we're talking about with that. So here's that to start to give an idea of what I'm talking. Okay, we've got some normal terrain. We're setting up here. The target's on a slightly uphill back there. What we shoot on a lot, shooting on a paddock and that sort of stuff. Take our first shot.
Right and low. 2 targets right, 3 targets low.
And you can see out of that we get an impact point. So it was a starting place to start working out how to get onto target. We then, out of that, we look at that and they'll make a visual assessment of the difference between that and target. So with that visual assessment, keep in mind we're taking it from the point that we saw the impact. So X amount of MOA needs to be raised to do that. So then we have a new set of settings, dial them into the scope and take the shot. Look at that, the shot's well short. Okay, so now why is that? What actually happened there? Let's have a look at those setting adjustment. Well, the adjustment was right to what we figured out, but as you can see, that didn't make it to target. Now this is very much about the terrain and the trajectory of an ELR shot with the bullet dropping like it is. But let's step forward and take a shot, same bullet out, and see what it actually takes to get them to target.
It moved, yeah. I think there's a hit.
There it is. And those are actually the settings we needed to be able to get onto target. As you can see, that's quite a bit higher. That was the settings that we did have by simply making an optical adjustment. And that is the settings that we needed to get onto target. Now, as said, very much influenced by the shape of the land and by the arc of the bullet as to how far you're out. But let's try a different piece of land to see what that actually looks like. Okay, so this is across a valley shooting into a steep rise on the side of a mountain or whatever. First shot, exactly the same trajectory, and once again we get an impact point. We'll do exactly the same thing. We use a visual assessment to change over to get onto that. Whether that's 3 MOA or that's 10 MOA, but we use a visual assessment for a new set of settings to be able to get onto target. Now this time around we'll go straight through and do a shot that's actually on target. So we're seeing the difference. There it is, and out of that we can see what settings we actually needed. Now, down here is the settings that we thought we were going to need. As you can see, there's a very little difference between the perfect shot and what it looked like we're going to need. So this is very much about the fact we have steep ground behind the target. Now let's look at something in probably the hardest way to do it, when we've got flat land where the target's sitting on. We've still got something we can shoot over with a valley, but we've got flat land where the target's sitting. First shot, exactly the same trajectory. Same deal. We've got an impact point. We do an optical assessment to be able to see where we're going to go. So we end up with another set of settings on there, so we're going to be able to shoot. Okay, so with that, we're going forward to what it really took to get onto target. And as you can see here, between those settings, which are what we thought we were going to need to get onto target, and those settings which you needed to get onto target, there's a very big difference. Now this is all about ELR shooting, so you're talking about where the bullet is definitely running out of speed, it's coming down a fair bit faster. So yes, it's to do with the arc of the bullet and the terrain you're talking about. What we're actually talking about there is with extreme range, long range right to extreme range to ultra long range, we're talking about the shot placement is more about distance than elevation. But you're only, as a shooter or as a spotter, your only reference to where that distance is actually the elevation, whether it's low or it's high of target. And your terrain and your bullet angle are the things that cause you to see that. So the people will be asking, okay, you've told us this problem, you've pointed out this problem, how do you fix that? Where's the app I can get to figure that stuff out? Well, there is no app. There are various ways to try and fix this. Understanding your terrain is one of them. So if you can see the bullet is short, but that is level with something that you can place a measurement to. I mean, in some cases, with undulating ground you're shooting at, you can actually see something that looks like it's only just short of target, but if you look properly and know your terrain, you can see that, oh, actually that where that is on the same level as that gatepost or that rock face or that whatever it is, and then I can, okay, well that's actually 200 meters short of the target. In, like I said, in undulating terrain, it's one of the tricks in our world. If you have a lot of this stuff going on, you can have shots that disappear because they've gone into a place you can't see, which can be incredibly hard to distinguish as a spotting scope. But if you've got terrain that's gradually going up and you're then know there's nothing going missing, then the truth of it is you start to work it out with knowledge of what you're shooting in, with an understanding of what your bullet trajectory is, recording your data all the time, making sense of what you're actually seeing. The simple answer to it is there's no maths to do this. Unless you have exactly the distance it's shot at, you can't fully use your data or your settings, your apps and things with your bullet speed and your muzzle velocity and all the rest of it. The other thing that people might say is, okay, well, if you had proper muzzle velocity and the proper ballistic app, you'll just be able to get out there and do that accurately. So you've got all the multi ballistic coefficients and the forward off and all these things that convince you that with all this information you'll be able to get the bullet right there. The truth of it is it's not as simple as that, no matter how you look at it. In extreme long range shooting and ultra long range shooting, the differences in what the conditions are for your bullet to go through are not able to be read. There's no magic that tells you what the air density is and what the wind position is at 200 feet above the ground. We can't see that. We don't have modern technology. We don't have radars. We don't have anything that can measure those wind currents over the full flight of the bullet. So things will vary. The only thing you actually have to figure out what's going is your impact on the ground. And what I'm really trying to put forward is that don't get frustrated when it lands 10 MOA low and you adjust 10 MOA on your scope and it only moves up 2 MOA. It isn't something that your load's doing wrong. It isn't something that you're doing wrong as a shooter. What it is exactly what I've just explained in that video, is that the match between what you can see and what is actually happening to the bullet versus the terrain out there are different. So it means generally it's going to take a few more shots to get and make sense of it all. But if you have all this stuff in the back of your head, then it's going to make it easier to get to that point. Don't get frustrated with it. It is the nature of what's actually happening out there. And obviously the steeper the ground behind the target, the less this is a problem, but it still factors in. Even if you've got a 60-degree slope, it still factors in. If you actually have a look at that, you still see it's not accurate. A lot closer to, but understand what's going on, and don't blame your bullet stability and that sort of stuff because you're not getting the corrections you want, because it is actually the maths or the complexities of what shoots out there. It's also something that might make it a little easier to understand why we do the spotting calls, why Sam calls to me targets in the way of rather than MOA. And that's because largely in ELR stuff, I'm not using, if it appears to be 3 MOA short, I'm not adjusting 3 MOA to get there. I try and make sense of the terrain that I'm shooting in. I understand it to a degree. I've done a fair bit of it. But when Sam calls 8 targets low, I know that I'm largely going to be adjusting. In most of the terrain I'm shooting at, I'm probably 15 to 20 MOA, so that also works into the fact that I know I've got a 24-inch plate. So if I'm at 2,400 yards, one target is 1 MOA. There's all that sort of maths going on. But what I'm actually saying is the distance that we can see is low is then extrapolated into an adjustment that I'm making. It is also why a spotting call on a very low shot is only a real rough estimation, and Sam doesn't try and make that too accurate. It's a long way to go. It's a rough idea. As we get closer to target, as it gets closer, you'll find her spotting calls get a lot more accurate, a lot closer, and the same for me. My adjustments start to get closer to the actual distance that we've got, because I know that tyranny, that problem of distance versus bullet fall versus angle of ground, are all starting to get closer into the place I want to be. So anyway, a confusing topic to go into. I hope I haven't made that more confusing. I am really trying to take it to a point where to remove some of that frustration, to remove some of those issues that you're going to end up with in the way of trying to fight this side of things. It is basic, it is what we all go through. And like I said, I hope that's of some help. Anyway, guys, thanks for checking in on us, and we'll catch you next time.
Hi guys, Sam here. For folks that are interested in our products that you will have seen in our videos, these are all products that Mark has designed through our experience in ELR Shooting. We manufacture them here ourselves, the likes of our adjustable bag bases, bag riders, bipod systems, muzzle brakes, shot data recording sets, and even our great fun little 22 long rifle target. These are all available on our web store, the links to which are below this video, along with our contact information. And guys, we work hard at putting these videos together, so we appreciate all the help we can get. For those of you who haven't subscribed, don't forget and hit the bell so you get notifications of when our videos come out. It would be awesome to get some financial support. So for those of you who can, you can purchase support bits on our web store, which help us bring these videos to you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.